Hello, everyone. Welcome to a kind of an unusual Patriarchy Ruins Everything episode, but one that I hope to do more often in the future, which is having guests join me for a chill conversation. And I'm excited today have a friend, someone with whom I've played D&D before and whose opinions I respect a lot and whose thoughts I have a lot of time for. I'll just introduce them as Cory. And I'll let Cory kind of speak for themselves in terms of like, yeah, what we're talking today, I should say, about matriarchy. With the series on patriarchy, obviously, matriarchy is going to come up, but it's not something I've had a lot of time to delve into yet. And Cory expressed interest and some knowledge on the topic, and I was eager to have someone with whom I could talk this stuff about because I'm a nerd and sometimes I feel lonely in my nerdy. So I'm dragging Cory here with me to talk about matriarchy. So Cory, as much as you want to kind of like say about yourselves and your background to the peoples, and also explain like your interest in the concept of matriarchy and sort of perspectives or yeah that you are bringing to it or want to bring to it.
Well, I was gonna open up referencing but I feel with that level of introduction that would be inappropriate. So yeah, uh as for like my expertise, I'm a chemist, so that's weird.
but
Really, I'm odd. That's really the big thing. So
but
as
I
for why I'm interested in this,
yeah.
it's not so much like, oh, that's interesting. I want to go find out more about this. And I go and read books and shit. It's more of a consequence of being what I was born as type deal, which I guess you can understand being a woman in a patriarchal society.
Yes, you're living with the effects of it all the time.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And I'm an American. I'm reclaiming my ethnicity by dropping the word native from that.
Okay.
Um, it's fun. I started doing that few years ago now, and now I'm actually starting to see others doing it, and I'm like,
Oh.
oh, it'd be really cool if I did that, but I really feel like we just came to the same conclusion at the same time. I'm just like, hey, wait a minute, you know what, white people, you ain't the Americans. We've been
Yes.
here for 30,000 years. We the
Yeah.
Americans.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Yes.
The
Valid
Africans
point.
are Africans, the Asians are Asians, Middle Easterns are Middle Easters, the Europeans are Europeans. Why is we the Native Americans?
Just yes. It's Americans.
Exactly. So, and specifically, I'm of the Haudenosaunee, and we have a matrilineal inherited system. Technically, it's a lot murkier nowadays, where we just
Mhm.
sort of like, eh, due to the influence of Western patriarchal systems that we have had to cope with
Mhm.
in modern society. So, like, what my clan and tribe derive from can often just be like whichever parent nowadays, as opposed to the more traditional matrilineal system or the more Western patriarchal uh, derivation.
Before we go any further, can you, because I don't think a lot of people would be familiar with a culture of a matriarchal tradition or culture within it, and you've obviously experienced both in a way that other people haven't. So could you speak a bit to your experience about like similarities or differences?
Well, that's the thing. Because of that whole ongoing genocide thing,
Yeah, yeah,
a lot of the traditional stuff I have never really personally experienced because it was just never an option for me
right.
because we
It's
don't do that anymore because that's not the way things are done in the West.
mhm. That
But
opportunity was taken from you.
exactly. But I read, I learn about my own peoples and our history and whatnot. But a lot of it for us wasn't the same rigidity of division that we see in
Mm.
even places like the United States. Because back when I was in school, back when I was in college and taking sociology classes, I don't think this is typified as such as much anymore. I think it's fallen out of vogue. But when I was learning, uh, we categorized places like the United States as a post-patriarchy, as opposed to just a straight patriarchy.
Okay.
And the definition thereof is you're technically not a patriarchy, but you still have all the baggage and bullshit of a patriarchy.
Okay, yes. Kind of like legally everyone's equal on paper, but in practice and in culture and
Exactly.
economics and yes,
Yeah,
everything
like
else.
technically, both
Yeah.
men and women can have jobs,
Mm-hmm.
but
The
women going to earn 75% of what men earn.
yeah,
Oops.
yeah.
So not a hard patriarchy.
Right.
I think that's the distinction people make nowadays of like hard and soft as opposed to like
Okay.
this
I
is the patriarchy, this is the post patriarchy.
yeah. That's a more accessible way than structural.
I suppose, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, if we had hard and soft racism, but there's
Yeah.
also I think that's a much more complex thing with racism. But anyway, we'll I mean, it intersects,
It's
but we'll
definitely
try.
also a part of it, yeah.
Yes, yes. Um,
Because
but
like from what I know about the Haudenosaunee, uh it wouldn't we're objectively matrilineal,
mhm,
but I don't think we would necessarily say that we are matriarchal because we we don't define we don't have this rigidity of like differences between the sexes
mhm,
like what you were talking about yesterday with that paper
mhm.
showing of just like some places were just like man woman
Yeah, you both hunt.
yeah, and very similarly like the idea of like having in the case it's a good comparison to draw between the Haudenosaunee and the United States because one of us plagiarized the other.
I wonder who that was.
I wonder which
Yeah.
one came first. and, but put a pin in that because I would like to circle back to that because that is a good point to make about because I would like to deal with the whole institutionalization and dissemination of knowledge
Mhm.
in regard to facts like that.
Sure.
But we're not exactly matriarchal because even though we track descent through women, we women can hold positions of elected office, men can hold positions of elected office.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't matter. Men and women can do whatever because it's very egalitarian. So the notion of like matriarchal is too harsh to apply to us.
I was just really like following your point quite fully and thinking that we because again of this sort of simplistic dichotomous thinking. You have man, woman, patriarchy, matriarchy, and
Yes.
people will try, try to say they're that somehow that these are equivalent. But how women as a group operate within spheres of power, it doesn't have to be sitting on a throne, executive power, doing all, a functional, basically a man, but in a woman's body,
Yes.
as
That is
Elizabeth said.
often the way it's presented as.
Yes. I have the body of a weak woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a lion, or whatever it was that Elizabeth said to her troops. This idea, and so you're right. When we talk about that, we have to really think more about spheres of influence and of power, not being in rigid categories like they are formalized with a constitution and that we kind of understand it.
Yes. And on that same note, I would also it's why I brought up the more archaic way of post-patriarchy. It would not surprise me that if we were to go back from long before the Haudenosaunee ever existed, that those of us who would eventually become the Haudenosaunee were living in a matriarchal society
Hmm.
whose and we moved into the post-matriarchal society of the Haudenosaunee when we unified and create a big ass nation state. But that would not surprise me because comparatively, we see this with ancient Egypt. And I'm weird, as we have established.
You're
And
delightful.
so when back when I was 18 and like, okay, it's time for you to decide what you're gonna do with your life, I
Yeah.
was like, I love ancient Egypt. It's so cool and unique. I want to go be an Egyptologist.
Oh,
And well, then I learned you have two choices to be an Egyptologist.
okay.
I don't know if it's still only two choices, but it wouldn't surprise me if there are still only two choices to be an Egyptologist. You can either go to Cairo,
Okay. It makes sense.
which,
Yeah.
yeah, on the one hand, ease of access, great.
Yep.
On the other hand, it's 8 million degrees outside.
Yeah, it's
I
Cairo
don't want that.
in summer. Yeah.
Exactly.
And autumn
It's
and
not
spring.
summer. There is only
Yeah.
summer. You have summer and summer alone. That's hell. I don't want that. No, no, God, no. And the other option is London. And I'm
Okay.
like, well, the climate's better, but
It's so
then I'm
expensive.
surrounded by the English. So I'm just not. I'm gonna keep this as like a hobby
Yes.
and be a neophytic scholar on on ancient Egypt. But nope, that's not for me. I'm just gonna go be a chemist now.
Can I do a little sidebar here? When I
Oh
was
sure.
when I was deciding what to do for a master's degree, I was like, I'm going to do whatever I'm interested in. So I ended up, of course, doing political behavior because I did do political science as my undergraduate. But for a while, I did seriously consider doing early Christian history and
Yeah, that's
becoming,
another fun one.
yeah, like a textual scholar of the both the official and the unofficial publications.
By early Christian history, you mean like the three, four, five, 600s, not the.
I'm basically from the first century through the third.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the really good stuff.
Yeah, that's the fun stuff.
That's
But
the fun stuff. Because
yeah,
some people say like early Christian history and they mean like early
oh, the
papacy
church
type Christian
history,
history.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, more like the founding and the establishment and creation of the identity for and all of that.
yeah.
Yes,
Like the
but
Gnostics and shit.
yep.
That's my jam.
But then I learned I'd have to learn ancient Hebrew, ancient Greek, ancient Coptic. I was like, nope, I'm just gonna
Yeah,
nope out of this.
yeah. That's on the ancient Greek note. Like I know a bit of ancient Greek. Have I said I'm weird yet?
Yeah, again, delightful, delightful.
Of the weird shit I know. I also know a bit of ancient Egypt, obvious should
Yes,
now,
yeah,
but that's less surprising. But
autodidact.
yeah, but because I know a bit of ancient Greek, and obviously we know Roman script
Mhm.
because English, like I fucking can't with Cyrillic. Like I feel
Russian.
like that was me in a past life where I was like, you know, it'd be fun. What if I took these languages, I stole all their letters, and I just fucked them up so that they are nothing like what everyone else reads them as?
And then
No one,
add in
no
some
one will
more,
understand.
and add
Yeah,
in some more that don't have
just
equivalents.
spin some around a
Yes.
bit. It's just like no one will be able to read this. Best joke ever. And then me flash forward and like, why did I do this?
Now you
I
have to
can't
learn
read
it.
any of
That's
this. I can't read any of this. I hate this.
so as delightful as this little sidebar has been. Yes, we should get back
Yes.
to. So we have basically the lived reality experience that's which lost, and maybe some of it which has been preserved through memory and reestablishing customs in particular pockets or families or oral traditions. You know, and not just like in Native or in American culture, but just like also globally as colonialism has moved through
Yes.
and
Yes.
tried to replace all cultural values with the one.
The cishet white patriarchal hegemony.
Yes.
That's what
Yeah.
the colonialism we have be.
That's yep. It's been the same song for 400 years.
If
Like the tune ain't
if
changed.
not longer.
Yeah. 2000, 1600. Yeah, yeah, probably yeah,
Yeah.
15th century, 500 years. Yes. Well, it depends on like yeah, where you count their anyway, centuries.
Yeah.
Well, we can agree for centuries. So the article you mentioned, the article I read out, or actually I had Speechify read out. This is awesome. What were your thoughts? Was it most of it familiar? Was some of it new? What were your
Oh,
thoughts on that?
in you kind of echoed one sentiment I had of just like no shit. who
Yeah.
doesn't know this? This who is like,
Whoever thought the
and
other was a good idea.
yeah, it's like on this same note, the book I mentioned to you, The Dawn of Everything, the underlying premise of that book, I had the exact same response of just like, okay, is who doesn't know this? Meanwhile, all the like newspaper articles about it at the time when it came out a few years ago was like, book upend centuries of historical and sociological thought, academia in ruins, and I'm like, what is this? And then I bought it, obviously, and then I read it and I was just like, who doesn't know this? What do you mean people believe differently?
So can you summarize what the book says? Because I didn't really explain. We were talking about the women and
Yeah.
participating
Oh,
in the
the
hunt.
on that, that's part of it. That's definitely that's just a part of it where like with the book, its main focus is talking about how and debunking this thought process that apparently everyone just takes for granted, like that societies go, you got people, and they get together and they make families, and then they make groups, and then they start hunting and gathering, and then they do farming, and then they make cities, and then they make states, and then they make feudal lords, and then they have kings, and then they do democracy. And that's how society evolves. But
Yeah, sometimes.
yeah, exactly. Maybe in Europe, but
Yep.
elsewhere, which was something that really tickled me about the article from the other day about the hunting and gathering, like the world map picture of like where all of the societies examined were
Yes.
from. It's just like, wow, look at all of these red dots all over the world,
Literally across
except
the
for
globe.
Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's conspicuously missing any of these. I wonder if there's some connection there with the patriarchy and colonialism and this pervasive, perpetuating idea of like patriarchy is how things evolved everywhere,
Yes.
because it's just not the case. And with the dawn of everything, it goes further to reinforce this by pointing out how like this evolution of societies from random people into hunter gatherers and feudalism, some places just went, you know what, we're going to go hunter gatherer, democracy.
Mhm.
We're not going to have kings. We're not going to do feudalism. Some places went, we're going to do democracy, and then oops, now we have a king. Mm, they just, it's completely random and out the whims of the people making up these societies, which to me, I'm just like, well, no shit. People are people. They do what they want. How is this groundbreaking and new? What do you mean people actually believe Sid Meier's civilization is how the world works?
It's handy a construct for a video game in terms of like rules and competition, but it's just a game. It's not history.
Exactly. It's not how the world works, and it should just be like obviously not how the world works in exactly the same way that it should be obvious that women are perfectly capable hunters. They have arms and legs and eyes and
Yes.
ears and brains
Yes.
that work. What is the thing? Oh, well, women can't lift things.
Oh,
Use
yeah.
a pulley,
Yeah.
a
It's,
lever.
get a
Those are
friend.
simple tools. Have another one. Yes. These are not problems.
Yes, quite.
It's just, but that's what is perpetuated because it needs to be. Otherwise, people will start being like, why are we doing this patriarchal bullshit?
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
Or people will say that the patriarchy doesn't exist. And kind of on that, when people laugh at the idea that science is sexist, and they'll say, how can the scientific process be
Mm,
sexist? I was like, I'm not saying the scientific method is sexist. We're saying the scientists who are interpreting the results and
the execution of
contextualizing,
it.
yes, contextualizing, telling the story of how the data came to be. Those are the people who have sexism problems, and that drifts into their interpretations.
And then that drifts into what becomes
Fact.
the, yes, what
Yeah.
is taken as fact and the norms.
Yes.
And that's regurgitated throughout academia. And then just
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, like, everyone believes this because that's what you were taught in school.
Right. And so you repeat it.
Yeah.
And then
And
that
you
gets
don't think
repeated.
anything
Yeah.
of it
Mm-hmm.
because personally, this is where I'm not so much interested in it. It's just that I think about these kinds of things because it doesn't mesh with what I experience. So I'm sort of forced to think
Right.
about it,
Yes.
which I don't have a problem with because I enjoy the exercise of thinking about it, but nonetheless.
I just want to point out for your inner Egyptologist, the picture being colored in right now is of the pyramids
Oh, is it?
at
That's
sunset.
cute. Oh, that's nice.
But yeah, this is quite the problem because I remember it was when I was teaching a postgraduate course at Birkbeck College in London, and I had taken quants courses as part of my master's program and also the PhD. No, I didn't have to do it again for my PhD because I did it in my master's. It doesn't matter. Anyway, but I also inherited 10 weeks of a qualitative research course that I then also had to teach. And for both of them, like I felt it was really, really important to go back to philosophy. And the philosophy you teach in a quants course is like the paradigm of scientific revolution and Popper and, and basically like skepticism. But in qual, you have to teach about values and norms because you're not dealing with numbers, you're dealing with people. And people aren't like just neutral, they're not numbers or formula. And one of the critiques that I was reading as I was going through the kind of critiques of positivism and this whole just like empiricist approach is that people sneak in values that they don't admit.
Yes.
And in particular, the idea that what is found in nature is normal, or what is most common in humans is somehow biologically natural. And it's basically, as I would say in the class, you're doing the classic Humean, is ought problem. You're trying to move from an ought statement, from an is statement to an ought, because it is this way, it ought to be this way. And
Exactly.
these you're missing steps. Why must it ought? There's a lot of things in nature I don't want to see reproduced in society because nature is horrific. So don't hold up natural processes as this sort of like moral good that we all just have to bow down before. We can question nature because nature's efficient. It's not moral. And so, yeah, that was teaching that, learning about that to teach to my students made me really emphasize that in my teaching and bring it out and not just skip over it because it isn't something people point out a lot. That a lot of people move
Yeah.
from is to ought, or what they ought to think is the case. That's what is we should have. So.
Yeah. To bring in a bit of intersectionality on that,
Mm-hmm.
like take gay and trans people existing
Yes.
where for I don't know, centuries now, the concept in Western academia is like, gays and trans people, that's new.
Yeah.
We ain't got that. That's not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like it leads to just some really crazy situations. Like they unearth a tomb and they see two skeletons and the skeletons are embracing and they're like, oh, what a romantic couple. Look, even the little dedication says how much they were in love even in life. Now they're in death. Oh, how sweet. And then they look at the skeletons and they're like, these are two dudes.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go, oh, such great friends these two were, such
Yes.
wonderful
Yes.
roommates.
Yes.
They cared so much about each other. It's like,
Yep.
okay.
Yes.
What?
This is yes, like
I don't
reversion to the norm or reversion to the status
exactly.
quo. Yeah, instead of
Exactly.
reversion to
Just
the mean. Yeah.
yeah, and just instead of just being like, "Oh, well that's interesting. I should change my perception based upon the facts presented at me." It's
Yes.
I'm going to force these facts to change to according to
Precisely.
my preconceived notions.
Yes. And also people's uncomfortableness with something new. Because you're right,
Yeah.
I mean, trans people, of course, have also always existed, and there are other
Yeah.
cultures that make space for people with gender identities. But uh, so when people now in the more mainstream are being confronted with it, and you get the whole, oh, what is a woman? Oh, the people on the left can't tell you what is a woman. I would ask in return, what does it feel like to be a man? What,
Well, yeah, I was about to say, like, okay, explain what man is then, please.
yeah, or even what it feels like. I mean, what do you mean if you know that you are a man, you feel like a man? What does that mean? Because when I go to look for what it means to feel like an essence of woman, so there's nothing. I'm literally reaching through air.
Now, Kristi, I'm pretty sure there was a song that tells you how to feel like a woman.
Yes. Looking out on the morning rain. But really, like the more I remember the moment I kind of got Buddhism, the whole idea that nothing has inherent existence. Everything is a construct of other things. Even if it's just the atoms in the thing you're sitting on right now, even the atoms are made up of other parts, right? So the universe is organized in a systematic way, but we tend to organize things and label them. And so because people didn't think about their cisness before, Elon Musk, ooh, a slur. Um,
Oh, oh no, now we're
right?
gonna, now you're demonetized throwing slurs like cis
Yes.
around.
But people are being confronted with an idea or concept that they haven't had to deal with before, and it's this uneasiness that comes with that. And they'll confidently insist that what they that cis people they don't understand how it could be to not feel like a man or not to feel comfortable in your body, and I don't think they've ever explored what that phrase would even mean. So anyway, just some
No, yeah,
thoughts,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's also kind of like one of the more mm, kind of insidious ways that things like patriarchy are perpetuated
Hmm.
is just that the people who are not getting shat upon by it, they don't think about it, and
Right.
they don't think about the consequences of not just the systems that be, but also of their own actions and participation in the
Yeah.
systems that be.
Yeah.
And, even in some cases, like the people who are being oppressed by the systems are actively engaging in perpetuating it.
Yep.
I live in the state of Georgia.
I was just thinking
Um,
about like pre-segregation America, right?
yeah,
White people
or
every day, they'd go on segregated buses and they just reinforce the segregation. They use segregated facilities without a second thought. And every time they did, they were reinforcing segregation.
yeah, without even thinking about it,
Yep.
without even having even a need to
Mm-hmm.
think about it, because that's just what's normal.
Yep. And that is what, like critical theory is about. And it's why,
Critical race theory. Oh no!
all
Now you're
critical
ultra
theories.
Now you're ultra demonetized.
Yes, exactly. And it's precisely why the conservatives are so terrified in terms of like letting people think critically about power structures. So,
Oh yeah, yeah. Like with critical race theory specifically, where they're all like, we shouldn't teach children critical race theory. I'm sitting here like, no, I actually want the children to have critical race
oh,
theory. Can we start
absolutely.
doing that?
Yes,
I think the world will be better if we did do that. The children start thinking critically about shit.
absolutely.
Let's start that in like kindergarten. So how old can children start critically thinking developmental scientists? I don't know.
Two, I think you can start
God,
doing some a
so
little bit of
young.
reasoning. I think you
That's
start
so
being.
young. I don't
Hey,
know. Then again, my nephew is like barely over one, and he knows more sign language than I do. So because I know none. So if he's able to like know sign language stuff,
I think by two they can certainly reason out like
yeah.
how to get things. Sometimes being sweet or
What was the age of the Dolly experiment? How old were they?
which okay. There's a
The
couple.
Black Dolly one?
Oh, the white
Which is the
dolly and
good
the black.
dolls, which
Yes,
is the bad dolls? How old were they? Were they like two? Whatever age that
toddler.
age,
Yeah,
like 1 year earlier, start doing the critical race theory
you're
thing.
then. Yes, but I mean, you
Uh,
said all of these systems of oppression are like I talk about. I refer to it as the white bubble. You know, I grew up in a
Yeah.
white bubble where all I heard was basically, I didn't know it at the time, but like slavery, apologia, deflecting, and everything that focused on the positive and minimized the negative. And it's very difficult to be critical in that inside of that bubble. And I think it's even it is the same case for patriarchy, but patriarchy explicitly has religion as an upholding force in a way that racism doesn't really have a religious equivalent anymore.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, I
Like,
mean, like
yeah,
it's
anymore.
not, yeah, you can't really
Anymore.
have relational, yes, it's not, oh, I mean, obviously there are black evangelical churches and white, so, I mean, again, the
Well,
effects
I
of it are
mean,
still there.
the
Like,
black evangelical churches are nothing like the white evangelical
exactly. Yes.
churches.
So, I mean, de facto, there is still a big separation, but it's not
Yeah.
church policy. Like the Mormons, are rolling back their incredibly racist policy in the 70s, going, this just doesn't look good. Um, so, so I would think that I would just patriarchy does have that kind of religious component to upholding it that hasn't been questioned yet. People don't generally
Yeah.
defend slavery because of the Bible anymore. That argument was defeated.
Well, I don't know
On
if
the
you know about
margins.
what's going on. Well, I mean, I don't know if you know what's going on down there in Florida, but
Well, it's not biblical. That's state justified. That's just racist white people using the government to do
have
more
you not heard what recently
indoctrination.
just been happening with the whole slavery was good for the
Oh,
slaves?
yeah, but that's not the
Yeah,
church doing it. That's the state. That's white
I
people
suppose that's
abusing
true.
the government to keep their white bubble going.
I
So,
suppose that
yeah,
is true. Yeah.
yeah. But so there was other things you talked about, like putting a pin in it. We wanted to come back to is about like the dissemination of knowledge. I think we touched a little bit on it, but did you want to go
Oh, yeah, yeah.
a bit more into it?
The plagiarism for the
Yes.
Haudenosaunee. Like, so my mother is older than you. You
Okay.
are older than I.
Yes.
And I don't know if you remember this because this was like a few years ago, but I asked you like when you was in when you were in public schools, because all three of us went to public schools in the U.S. Did you ever hear about like Haudenosaunee, aka they probably would have called it the Iroquois Confederacy back for you, being like relation to the establishment of the modern United States? And
Yeah. I
back at
can,
the time, back
yeah.
then you were like, I do vaguely remember
Yes.
something, but like, don't ask me specifics.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was I knew it was like early like constitutional influence, and
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if I learned it at university because I did do, of course, I did history as a minor, or at university. But my impression was like it was like a throwaway line in a textbook.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the impression you gave me as well.
Even though it's
Which,
like a huge component of the yes. So go
oh
ahead. Yeah.
yeah, like my mother, when she went into public schools, like she learned of this. This was taught to her. And to add real insult to injury, guess what state she went to public school in as a child?
Um I'm just gonna say Tennessee because it popped to
No,
mind. Okay.
fucking Florida.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're bringing it back to little D.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Full everything is circle. There
Everything's
are
come
only
back.
circles.
All comes back to the fascists.
But like she learned in public school in Florida. My public schooling was in the state of Georgia, and I learned nothing about the failed experiment of the first version of the United States.
What?
We didn't talk about nothing of that in
What?
my when I was in
Wow.
like public school. Like that was a trivia thing that people found out in I think like maybe late middle school, early high school of like there was a president before George Washington. But like that's as deep as it ever went for us. So there is this like a lot of people will talk about like what's going on in Florida right now as this like new thing white people are
Yeah.
doing. Like white people
New.
have just now lost their minds. But just from the three of us, and I know that's a worthless sample size, but it does illustrate the generational difference, I guess, of like the oldest one learned the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You got a gist of the truth.
Yeah.
And by the time it came to me,
Yeah.
gone,
Yeah.
just excised because it makes the founding fathers look bad. It makes them
Yeah.
look not as like these divine
Yes.
saviors to come in from the heavens to
Yeah.
give poor, decrepit modern man, the gift of democracy
And freedom.
and freedom. Yes, because like it's so wild and like I'm not. You, I don't know if you have ever. I don't ever think I've sent you any of the Ask a Slave videos, have I?
No.
Oh
I
my god,
okay.
I wholesale endorse the Ask a Slave videos on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel, Ask a Slave. It's a former reenactor
Okay.
from the Washington estate. Whatchamacallit? I don't know George Washington's house.
Oh,
Don't
yeah,
care about it that much.
yeah, Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, she was a reenactor and she's black. She no longer does them, which makes me sad, but I'm very happy because she's out there being successful on Black Lady Sketch Show, which is another show. Love it.
And getting also this Ask a Slave channel, which is getting probably way more interaction on a daily basis than she would get on a tour.
Maybe. But she no longer does it, but it's fine. Like, they're really good. They are fucking hilarious because what it is just her putting on the slave get up again and getting back into character in order to like showcase the shit people talk about, like the things they ask these
Oh, I
serious
actually
actors.
do think some of the questions that they get asked on a tour, right?
Yeah, and
Oh,
all
it's
all of the
so.
questions are allegedly real, which, given my own experience, I have no reason to believe that they are not
Oh,
100% real.
absolutely. If you know Americans, you know those questions are real.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, exactly. Like, and some of my two favorite episodes are the Thanksgiving, because that's the one that talks about these Indians,
Oh God.
and the children one. The children one because there's like 17 children just asking back to back, who invented slavery? Who invented slavery? Who invented slavery? And she just goes, I don't know. Probably a white man. And if he didn't, he'd say he did. And I'm just like, oh
Done.
God, it's, yes, yes, Lizzie May.
Yeah.
10 out of 10. But the American one actually has, oh God, what is his name? A, I don't think he was a fellow reenactor, but he was one of, but he comes in and pretends to be Red Shirt, who is the historical Seneca man, part of the Haudenosaunee,
Okay.
who came to, who we sent over to talk to the white people about democracy because what happened was the colonists won their revolution. They set up a government by copying the the Magna Carta, basically, just wholesale plagiarize. We'll just do the Magna Carta, boom, and that country collapses
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
Just boom, it doesn't work.
No, you need
So
a
then
federal
they're like,
government.
yeah. So then they're like, how can we do this? What can we do? And Benjamin Franklin, like fucking Benjamin Franklin, super ultra racist Benjamin Franklin, is like,
The swarthy Germans,
oh, it gets
the
better.
swarthy Swedes.
He's like, oh, I've been talking to them Injuns over there, 5 feet to the left of us. They've been doing democracy. Why don't we bring one of them over here? So we send one of ours over, and I wish I could remember his name. I just remember them calling him Red Shirt.
I thought you meant a
Because
Star Trek episode when you initially said it, because that was my first frame of reference. But
that would be most people's favorite. No, they
yeah.
called him Red Shirt because he fought for the British. Because
Ah.
guess what, white people? It might be a good idea to try and keep agreements and pacts you
Yeah.
make.
Yeah. Don't stab people
That's
in the
actually,
back.
yeah, that's actually a fun thing. Fun little sidebar. The U.S. Revolution was actually our Civil War because half of us were like, those fucking white people across the sea, they're shit. who gives a fuck about keeping the agreements we've made with them? They're assholes. Maybe these white people here will be better. Let's side with them. And the other half was like, no, we need to side with the assholes we know. We made agreements. We need to keep our word. So they fought with the British.
Right. So that split
So
York.
yeah, yeah. So it's a little known historical fact that a lot of the Civil War, not Civil War, Revolutionary War in the U.S. was our Civil War of us killing ourselves for white people.
That
Yay!
perspective is never taught.
No, yeah, it's not. I mean, why would it be? But yeah, they called him Red Jacket because he fought for the British, had a red jacket, because
Yeah,
British Army, and also they can't pronounce his name.
of course not, because white people.
Yeah.
That would require effort and learning another culture that isn't European. Ugh. But did we get to your point about universities?
Oh, just that, you know, this whole removal of okay, I did remember it right. Harusuke Wasa. That's the man who talked before the
Ah,
Continental
okay.
Congress and gave the white man the great law of peace. And to which Benjamin Franklin responded with, if these ignorant savages can do this for thousands of years, surely we can do it for a few hundred. To which I'm just like, well, Benjamin Franklin,
Yeah,
I wish you were not wrong. You were accurate in your few hundred quantity.
we're being tested as we speak.
Yeah. 300 years later, oops.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Expiration date.
maybe you could have said thousands for the white people too, Benjamin Franklin. Maybe set that bar higher.
I do remember watching a video on the power system, and there were like two smaller states that had important roles, and so it was like, oh, it was about balancing things out so that the smaller nations, sorry, um, were protected and could
Oh, you
participate,
mean
but
the
weren't even.
Haudenosaunee?
Yes. Do
Oh
you?
yeah, no, don't call them states. It's fine. Like
Oh,
that's
okay.
something else that people just don't understand that they really
Really?
should. Like the United States is just copy pasted Haudenosaunee. Each individual nation or state,
Mm-hmm.
it's the exact same system, right down to fucking everything. But the U.S. has a whole bunch of racism that we don't
Yes.
have
Do you
added
remember?
in.
Do you remember more about the details of how it was set up? Uh,
The Haudenosaunee?
yeah.
Yeah, it's every nation, all. Let's see. There's 6 nations currently. Back then, I think there was only 4. Yeah, during the revolution, there was only 4. See, that's the other thing. The whole like adding states to the union.
Yeah.
Who invented that? We did. We invented that. We invented everything.
Because people wanted to join.
Yeah, people wanted to join because of stability and the
Hmm.
whole great law of peace. Aside from just being like good law, I mean, what are you gonna say? Like, oh, what's your system of government called? Oh, we call it the great law of peace. Well, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
No one's gonna.
No one's gonna
Good
go for
PR
that.
move. Good PR move. But regardless of the PR move, it's still the representative democracy, the checks and balances system of having multiple houses as well as executive branch and bicameral. The one thing we don't have, though, or didn't have, I will say, is a judicial system
Mm,
as a branch.
right.
Mostly because, like, sorry, I just remembered some of the criticisms levied against us of like, you can't do you weren't a democracy, which is another thing, but we can get into that in a moment. Of like, the reason we don't have a judicial system is because we just didn't. It wouldn't matter the type of problems that the judiciary answers
Hmm.
in the United States, that wasn't a problem for us. And in that note, what I've just remembered was there have been many reasons many white supremacist reasons of bad faith criticisms against the Haudenosaunee of like, you didn't do that you're not a democracy. And I'm like, okay, how am I not a democracy? You didn't call it a democracy. Therefore, you're not a democracy. And I'm like, well, great. I guess thousands of years of democracy means that we didn't do democracy because we didn't call it democracy.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know any Greek people. Great. Wonderful logic there, white people.
Yeah.
Another just horrible hot take was that I've seen is like, well, you have it in the Great Law of Peace that when someone dies in office, their spouse takes over until the next election can be held. That's not democracy. And I'm like,
What?
John McCain's dead body.
Yeah.
What happened when you died? Oh, your wife took
Yeah.
over until they had a special election?
Yep.
I guess the United States has no democracy.
Yep. They've done that with governors too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just a natural thing. The only difference is I don't think it's like laws in the United States. I think it's just ceremonial practice. Like the spouse will step in, or the governor will appoint someone,
Yeah.
or
Or someone was like
usually
running
appoint the
for
spouse.
governor. I think someone was running for governor and died, and so his wife was going to step in and
Yeah,
take over
yeah.
his seat if he
That
won.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a formalized practice like it is in the Haudenosaunee, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like
It still happens.
it still happens.
And on the judiciary point, the United Kingdom doesn't have a separate judicial branch. They just have like the House and the Lords and the Crown. And
Yep.
and so you can it's not like you didn't have a judicial system. It just wasn't a separate branch in the way that
Well, it wasn't
is.
really like it wasn't like a big formalized thing. Because even in the UK, your judicial system runs through
Yes, it's still
a
it's
thing.
there are laws and and they punish whatever it is, whatever contracts and things that need to be administered, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need a judicial branch in order to be considered a democracy, or
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh well, no, the judicial thing isn't a criticism of democracy. The thing that sparked it of like we don't have this. We also don't have a Bill of Rights in our Great Law of Peace,
okay.
which is something that's like said like you don't have a Bill of Rights. Ipso
So
facto, no democracy. To which I just respond with like, okay, here's the thing. Here's the reason why we don't have a Bill of Rights. Because all the shit that the Bill of Rights protects you against is things we in a million like the notion that you need these protections is just so insane to us. Never in a million like you don't protect people from having the state force their religion on everyone. And I'm like, why would anyone do that? Why would we do that? Why would we need a law about that? No one's going to do that.
yeah,
Why do you do that? What's
your culture needed a law for that. Ours didn't.
exactly like that's also another reason on why we went from 4 to 5 to now 6. We're probably going to go with up to 7 soon. Probably not in my lifetime, but we do house the Delaware people, and housing the Delaware people is a wonderful example of what I'm talking about, because when the Delaware came to us, we're like, of course, our land is your land. Stay as long as you need. Fuck the white people for sending you out of your home. But one of the things that we promised to do was to keep their traditions alive, because that is another thing that stolen and fucked up by the United States
Mhm.
is the e pluribus unum thing
Yes.
of like we are all one together,
Hmm.
but you are still you. We are not like a
Borg.
monolithic hegemon. Yeah, we're not a Borg. We're not a monolithic hegemony. Like the Mohawk and the Seneca are both of the Haudenosaunee, but the Mohawk are not the Seneca, and the Seneca are
Hmm.
not the Mohawk. But that doesn't matter because we're the same. Because that's another thing that was stolen from us, the idea of joining us, because we had this tradition back of, you go to war with someone, then war's over. Okay, what's the damages? And you have someone like me come in, tally up the damages, and say, okay, we need, you know, we lost Bill and Ted. We need like 2 or 3 men to take their place for a while, for let's say 3 years, however long is appropriate for the war. That's actually probably longer than a lot of them were, but so we get someone to replace Ted. He lives here for 3 years doing Ted stuff, whatever Ted was doing.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the 3 years, we pack them a bag and it's like, okay,
Bye, not Ted.
you can either you've lived here for 3 years, you can stay here, be one of us, or here's a bag filled with food and shit, and go back to where you came from. And allegedly, now take that with a grain of salt, the majority of people stayed. I don't know how, like, you know, I take that with a grain of salt, but I also don't think that it was a not like it's not pure propaganda. Like no one stayed now, but like I
If
don't necessarily believe that the overwhelming majority of them stayed.
Mhm. I mean, I think we kind of forget that, you know, the Romans had a tradition of hostages with various tribal leaders in the Gallic
Yeah,
places, and they didn't put them in prisons. I mean, they educated them. They, you know, they kept them in the royal palace. They were like, so it, and the whole idea actually was to win them over
yeah,
and to have the next generation be Romanized. So it's, yeah, if you want to build peace, then yeah, like you do compensation, but then it's done.
oh yeah. But like also on that same point, the the part that the United States fucks over is like if that person did join us, and let's say uh, Ted's replacement joined the Mohawk tribe, he was Mohawk now.
Mm,
Period.
yeah.
Doesn't matter what he was before. That no, he was always Mohawk. Fuck off. The what basically what the United States pretends to
Yeah.
do.
Then you have to come and be white.
Like we actually did that. Like that was what we did. If you joined us, you were us. Period. There was no second class citizens like, oh well, this one's an immigrant. He's not
Right.
not a real one of us. Like no, no, just flat out. If you joined us, you were us, and we were you. That's it. And that's why we grew as a nation and why we were so successful. Like the bullshit shining city on a hill garbage that the United States aspire to, bitch, that was us.
Mm,
The shining city is longhouses. That is what we are. And it's just really frustrating because in public schools, especially now, but even before now, these facts had been systemically destroyed over the decades. And like, why? Because they're an ultimate threat to the systems that be, in this case, in what we're talking about, patriarchy,
mm-hmm.
white supremacy,
Yeah.
everything, they're a threat to these things. It doesn't make the founding fathers as deific figures parting the heavens and descending upon us with this great enlightened idea.
Correct. Because oppression in this case is being upheld by myth, by
Exactly.
the goodness of whiteness.
Exactly. And bring it back to the dawn of everything. That is actually one of the one thing where I'm like, I don't know, boys. I think you might be stretching. The one thing that I'm just like not 100% comfortable like wholesale signing off on is that they make the argument that Europe's enlightenment was directly caused and stems from us in the Americas, and especially us of the Haudenosaunee, which they do give historical evidence for transmission of thought from us over here in the Americas to Europeans before the Enlightenment to enough degree where I'm like, okay, I can definitely understand how like our ideas of freedom, democracy, blah 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 blah, individual liberty could have possibly inspired Europeans to, you know, stop the serfdom.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I would go so far as to say like Europeans are so stupid they could never have come up with this shit on their own. Like that's where I'm like, I don't know.
So was this a
I
video
think
or?
you're no, The Dawn of Everything, the book.
Oh, the book. Okay, this was like their
Yeah.
concluding chapters.
Yeah, that's one of the conclusions
Okay.
they make.
Okay.
The other conclusion they make is like, why is different societies in different places? Well, different places have different resources. And I'm like, nah, shit. How is this
Yeah.
new? Who doesn't know this stuff?
That
How is this world shaking?
yeah, that would be what I would call a descriptive statement.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a conclusion.
And like, I don't want to say like it's not correct. It's not accurate to paint pre-Columbian Americas as like an anarcho-socialist paradise. Because we had wars and stuff.
Hmm.
They're nothing like the fucking wars Europeans did. We ain't got no 100-year war shit. Our wars were like days with like 20 dudes. That's our wars. We ain't doing the like thousands of people for hundreds of years thing. No. But in that vein, like it's not inaccurate to say that that's what like that either. And personally, I think the reason why is think about what you've eaten today or what you're going to eat today, depending on your time zone and stuff. Think about all the stuff that made the food you consume on the regular. Where did it come from? I don't mean in the immediate where did it come from. I mean, where did that food originate? An overwhelming portion of our food today originated here in the Americas. We were just overly abundant in natural resources. We have basically all the foods we eat today for forever. So in that abundancy, of course we're going to be more peaceful.
Mm.
We don't need to kill all our neighbors to get the one turnip like they were doing in Europe. Which really, for real, the natural foods of Europe, you got like lettuce,
Leeks, parsnips.
all the onions. I don't know why Europe just had all the onions except for like one, and then like radishes, and then cabbage and Brussels sprouts. But like that's it. That's it. That's the natural food of Europe. Of course, the Europeans are going to kill each other. They've got terrible food. They've got the worst food. There's also the whole like cultural difference in with like Europeans look at the auroch and go, "That tastes good. I'm gonna turn it into a cow so that it's just gonna go extinct if humans die off." Meanwhile, over here in the Americas, where we have our buffaloes and bison, we look at them and are like, "That tastes good."
And that's it.
Yeah, why would I fuck up? Why would I fuck that up? Why would I turn that into a cow?
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
I hadn't, so I just want to pause because I'm still a little bit processing. You can hear the sound of the dial-up going in the background. Your comment about, yeah, if you went through European history and a history of what's North America, and you just pluck a random individual from anywhere, most likely you're going to get some kind of peasant or whatever. And the average person in the Americas are going to have a much higher quality of life.
Oh my God, that reminds me. A few years ago now, feels like last year, fucking pandemic brain,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a study done at Oxford, I believe. What's the big university in London? I think that's Oxford.
There's a couple of them. There's Cambridge, Oxford. Those are the.
Fuck, it might have
Yeah.
been Cambridge.
It's
But
at
they
Oxford. Just say
made,
Oxbridge.
yeah, Oxbridge. They made a sociological study, equality index
Mm-hmm.
about like doing who has equal societies and shit. And like you plug in all the variables and it spits out a number, and like the closer to the number one you are, the more equal your society is. And so, they were like, we'll do feudal France and compare it to modern France, and feudal England compare it to modern England, and
Mm-hmm. Oh
you
no.
know, and so like it was what you expected. Feudal
I
European societies were like a 17, and the modern European societies were like a 14. Not good, but
mm,
better. And so they wanted to do the United States as well. Um, they're not stupid, so they didn't pick us of the Haudenosaunee
I
to
was
be
gonna.
like, what's the old version of the United States? Yeah, let's not do that one. That'll just be bad. That'll just make us look
Yeah,
bad.
I was gonna say. I know exactly what's gonna happen to that score.
Yeah, I know, right? So they were like, I know, let's pick the worst culture in the Americas, which of course was the Mexica, more commonly known as the Aztec, although they
Oh
called themselves
God.
Mexica. And yeah, they are the worst. All the children of the Olmecs were terrible. They were definitely the worst of us. I feel I'm allowed to say that. I feel they had a heavily stratified society, whereas everyone else was like, no, no, everyone equal, everyone equal, everyone equal. But the Aztecs were like, nope, we got these people up here, and we got these other people here, and it just goes all the way down until you get slaves. So they were like, yes, this is perfect to compare to the modern United States. So they plug in all their data for Aztec society,
Mm-hmm.
spits out a number, and the number it spits out was like a 1.14. And they were just like, uh, how, uh, how did I don't understand. The heavily stratified European societies was like 17. How is this almost a 1? And being the weirdo that I am, I actually have an answer. Because even though the worst of us who had non-ethnic slavery, thank God, they weren't that bad, but they had slaves. You could actually buy yourself out of slavery in Aztec times. So, like, legitimately buy yourself out, not like the modern slavery with the horse shit of like, you're going to work for 17
Yes.
hours and earn 3 pennies
Mm-hmm.
per hour.
Meanwhile,
Good
we're
luck
charging you
paying,
for everything.
yeah, yeah, good luck paying off your debt that way. None of that bullshit. They could actually earn themselves out of slavery. But the reason why I'm pretty sure the index spat out like it's practically equal is because the slaves, and they did delve into this because they were like, how could this be possible? Because the slaves had basically the same diet as the kings. And the reason for that is, ironically, a religious one. Because according to the Aztec religion, every human life is valuable. I know there's a cultural like malaise about the human sacrifice, but the reason they did the human sacrifices is because the gods need human blood and
Oh,
hearts and shit in the same way that humans need corn. So just killing some random person or like maiming your slaves and shit is literally taking food away from the gods. So it's not just like immoral and bad, it's also literal blasphemy. So that's I'm pretty sure why, because they treated I'm not I mean it's still slavery. I'm not up here trying to say they treated their slaves good.
yeah.
None of that bullshit. It's just like they fed their slaves the same quality of food as the king ate, because the slave is also the food of the gods, just like the king is.
Yeah, and Europeans don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to blood sacrifice. I mean, that's what Christianity is founded on. It's
Oh well,
about
I mean,
talking about
also
getting
you have
bathed
the
in the blood of the lamb.
I'm bathed in his blood.
Ugh, ugh, ugh.
But also on the same note, there was human sacrifice all over Europe too. They don't talk about
Oh,
that because
right. Well, yeah, they called it something else. They called it the Inquisition.
oh no, I'm talking like actual like putting man up on altar and pulling his heart out,
Are you
same as
talking?
the Aztec.
Oh, you mean like the Druids?
Yeah,
And they
Druids
find
is one
human
of
sac.
them.
Oh yeah, in bogs and stuff,
Um,
they find
yeah. Oh, Bogsman,
sacrifices.
all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah. I watched Time
Yeah.
King.
But yeah, so it's just kind of a hollow criticism
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
Aztecs of like they
absolutely.
did human sacrifice. They're backwards, and I'm like, bitch, you did human sacrifice too.
What do you
They at
think?
least
What do you?
egalitarianized their human sacrifice.
They
You're
didn't.
over here saying like, it's fine, we did the human sacrifice. They weren't people.
Well, Europe's
What?
greatest empire made it into a sport, a public spectacle.
Yeah,
That was
that's
human
true.
sacrifice, basically, right? Usually to the
Yeah.
gods of the city or whatever in honor of some victory. So, well, this has been fun. Is there anything we haven't talked about that we'd like to?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I'll probably think of something like 5 weeks from now. I'll be like, oh shit, that thing. Oh, I wish I
Well,
talked about that.
then you'll just have to come back on in 5
Yeah,
weeks.
that'd be fine
Yeah, this
if I
was
remember something.
yeah. So
But yeah. Oh wait, there is one thing.
yeah.
The ramifications of what we've been talking about. We kind of touched on it with the
Mm,
whole erasure of the Haudenosaunee's influence on the development of the United States. But I'd also like to touch a bit on how these truisms that we create with our academia, the like trans people are new. That's not a thing in old times.
yeah.
Gay marriage was a new invention. No one back then got gay married. Like those types of truisms, they
Hmm.
perpetuate themselves in. We already did talk about the whole like the scientist reports it, gets repeated, academia accepts it, it becomes the norm, then that gets taught out to all the children, and all the children don't think about it. We touched on that, but there's one step that we didn't talk about where it becomes, in my opinion, even more insidious about how the media that we then go on to create perpetuates these same things,
Hmm.
and we unthinkingly don't think about it. And it's so banal in its perpetuation because I'd like to highlight. I'm showing my weird slash loserness now. Um, Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Are you pulling the okay? Uh, what is
Uh,
this?
Pokemon Legends Arceus is the Pokemon version of the establishment of the Republic of Ezo, which was a democracy established in the Bakumatsu period before World War II in the topmost island of Japan, Hokkaido, called Ezo back then. And one of the interesting things aside from the fact that it like lasted for 5 minutes, is that the historical Republic of Ezo had much more egalitarian and equal rights for land owning Ainu, the indigenous people of Hokkaido. Now, the Pokemon version is the Pokemon version, but why I bring this up is because for the longest time in Japan, it has been taught in public schools that you had the Jomon, and the modern Japanese people are descendants of the Jomon, and the Ainu are different than the Jomon. And so that's why it's okay to oppress the Ainu, because they're not really native to Hokkaido. They're
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 not really
actually
us.
foreigners too.
Mm,
Where they're not really Jomon. Like the Jomons are the natives, but not the Ainu. They're foreigners too, just like us. So it's okay to oppress them because they're not Jomon. And a couple years back, oh god, it might actually be like 5 years back, because I think it was like 2018 or 2019, there was a biological survey done of Japan, and I don't really know why they were doing their intent to do this, but the conclusions that they came was dramatically fascinating, where your average Japanese person has like 2-3% Jomon ancestry.
hmm.
Your average Ainu person, 98 to 99% Jomon. So it's not so much that the Ainu came from elsewhere and displaced the Jomon. It's that the Ainu are just Jomon. They're just the Jomon.
Right.
And public schools in Japan, this is as I have credit Japan, they learned this fact and it was just like, oops, change the textbooks, fix the textbooks, get rid of the propaganda. Could you imagine?
This that actually happened.
Yeah, yeah, they don't teach this. They don't teach this anymore. But what this has to do with Pokemon, in Legends Arceus, you deal with two fantasy versions of two Ainu tribes, and the antagonist is actually secretly a member of the Celestica people, whom the two fantasy Ainu tribes pretend to be. See, he's Jomon. He's fantasy Jomon. So the narrative structure of this game, of this Pokemon game, has this propaganda piece of the Ainu are non-indigenous,
Yeah,
the Ainu came from elsewhere, and the real indigenous people are these other people.
came from this propaganda.
Yes, it
being
came directly from
retold.
the propaganda, but I don't think it was necessarily like insidious Japanese people were racist. I don't think it was like
Right.
intentional. I think it was just that the people who made this are a bunch of boomers and Gen Xers
Hmm.
who in their public school half remember this fact of
Yeah.
like the Ainu aren't indigenous. Let's use that in the narrative story we're telling. And so they did. But oops.
Yep. It's like a still a ghost in the national conscious, in the national memory,
Exactly, because so
because
many people were taught it,
exactly.
even when the new stuff comes out, they don't know it, and they're
Right.
probably not following the science blogs where I learned about it
Right. And if they
because they're
don't have
because
kids in school, they won't
yeah,
hear about it or care about it.
I mean yeah, because they're Japanese video game maker people.
Yeah.
They ain't involved in the science stuff,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. So because of these norms that we establish, these truisms that we
Hmm.
run and perpetuate, it bleeds into everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Just think about all of the media tropes about, the male hunter, going
Yes,
back to the
exactly.
matriarchy thing. And yeah, you teach that to people and they think it's the truth because you're
Oh,
presenting it as if it is.
on that exact same note, I didn't watch the movie Prey, the Predator movie.
Oh, the one that just came out on Netflix.
Yeah, the Hulu.
Hulu, okay. In the
Yeah,
States. Okay.
I recommend it, but I didn't. I had reticence about watching it because the trailers for it showed a Comanche girl being like, "I want to go hunting with you, brother and father," and they're like, "Nope, you've got a vagina."
Mm.
And that was the way it was presented in the trailers. That's not the
Oh.
movie. The movie was like, you're too young, maybe next year.
Oh, okay.
Because like that's where I was just like, I don't want to see this because that's not how they were.
Yep.
That's not how they were. And that's not how it was. But the people who cut the trailer know that that is the truism that the common people have learned. So they present the truism, even
Hmm.
though that's not accurate to the movie.
Hmm. Oh, there was a point. Oh, it was just when you talked about how these things get reproduced, and I think a lot of it is subconscious too,
Oh yeah.
because I was just thinking it would be an interesting. I just like to do a content analysis, a dip of National Geographic photography of people in like the less developed world to see if there is a hunter gatherer, men hunt, women do caregiving and children, like a framework that is
I
seen more
think there
often.
was a study about like I mean it was also dealing with like the colonialist viewpoint
Yes, basically,
of the
yeah,
National Geographic photographers,
which
but I
includes
do
that,
believe there
yeah.
was a study of in that same vein of yeah, that included the whole like men go hunt, women take baby.
Hmm. And the photographer probably doesn't even consciously realize that
Oh,
they're
definitely.
doing it. They just think, oh, these are pics that people would expect. Like this is what I'm. Even
Exactly.
though
That's
he's,
what sells.
yeah, he's picking. I'm assuming it's a he here, especially going farther back in time with National Geographic. But he's curating people's lives, and he's taking. So yeah, that's.
That's the insidiousness of
Mm-hmm.
the perpetuation.
Yep.
Like people just do it and they don't ever examine what it is they're doing.
Yeah. And that's actually, I think, what having this debate and sometimes the horrible abuse people get with trans issues is it's kind of like one of the last frontiers of essentialism,
Yeah, I guess.
biological essentialism, and
Yeah.
all of this stuff because we've done racial essentialism and sort of like the binary fallaciousness. Like women are just different. Women are special.
Hmm.
Women shouldn't get involved in politics because they're too moral. They're too pure for it. Also, they're sluts. Um,
Also, they're crazy. They'll nuke
yes,
England.
exactly.
The
Um,
moment they get their periods, boom, World War III.
yes, I can't even remember what my point was now. But do you remember?
Um, that. Well, now I can't remember. You said that you can't remember.
Well, I think that means we should probably officially bring this to an end, but this was
Oh yeah.
really enjoyable. And to the people in the chat who stopped by, Sib, Bruce, Yella,
What is Sib not sleeping for?
yes, exactly. You should be dozing. And Chromatic Panic as well said hello. So hello to everybody who stopped by. Got 26 views, so that's
Oh,
fun. 5 current viewers, but this is not the usual time. And I think that the title will get some interest. So, anything you wanna plug or pitch or promote while
um,
you're here before I sign us off?
uh, shout out to Mia Mulder. Love her videos. I don't know.
Okay.
I just remembered a joke she did about the colonialism.
All right. Well, thank you. And if honestly, if you think of something else in 5 weeks, come on, because this is a lot of fun and very
Yeah.
chill. And I hope people enjoyed the lava lamp and the paint by numbers art and just kind of chilled out and enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much, Corey, for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was very fun.
Yes, it was. And everyone else, I will see you next Saturday. So until then, I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Have a great one, and I'll see you later. Bye. Say
Bye.
goodbye.
Bye.
And we're off air.